Before we start the video, make sure to subscribe to my channel. I appreciate all the support I received from you. And as always, all the information in my videos is rumors taken from the internet or the street. I'm not saying the information is fact. The story of No Limit Faro, DrenchGang. 2020 was a very eventful year, not least for Pocket Town, who tragically lost 5 members and nearly lost a 6th. However, we start with NLMB, who in April 2020 lost Tito G in a fatal hit and run in the territory of Mall Town. The driver, or rather murderer, was not found. Police described the car as being a dark-colored 4-door sedan with possible front-end damage. 2 weeks later, Anna, who was the sister of BO from MTG, was murdered. Anna was also a member of MTG BO block. She has several pictures on her Facebook where she is toting guns and dropping gang signs. Anna was in a Ford with 2 other males about in the 7500 block of South Blackstone Avenue when a dark-colored car sped up behind them and someone inside fired shots, striking her in the head, Chicago police said. The driver of her vehicle took her to the 6800 block of South Cottage Grove Avenue, where paramedics responded and sadly pronounced her dead at the scene. The reason I say this is because there are rumors that No Limit was behind the murder, just like the murder of her brother B.O., who was killed in July 2015, allegedly by G. Mineski and Mad Max from NLMB. However, which member from NLMB that was behind the murder of Anna is unknown. Anna died only at the age of 20 and had a 2-year-old son who will now be without his mother for the rest of his life. Just hours after the murder of Anna, her brother Tana from MTG made a post on Facebook where he wrote, NLMBK, which stands for NLMB Killer, which indicates that it was NLMB who was behind the murder. 2 days before the murder, Jeezy from MTG wrote the same thing on Facebook for unknown reasons. Jeezy was killed by Mally from NLMB a few months later, which we will come to later in the story. In early May 2020, Pocket Town lost their first member of the year, Greasy from Zolan/Pocket Town. Greasy, whose real name was Eric Chapman Jr., was killed out west after arguing with an unknown offender who pulled out a gun and killed him, indicating that it was not enemies who got him. Just a month after losing Greasy, Pocket Town lost another member, Big Gang, also known as Big Glizzy or Big Slide. He was shot along with 3 others at a house party in Robbins, Illinois. Big Gang, whose real name was James Barnes, was tragically pronounced dead at Ingalls Memorial Hospital in Harvey a short time later, while the other 3 wounded victims fortunately survived. It has previously been speculated about whether Big Gang was backdoored, but it seems to be false. To my knowledge, he was caught in a crossfire and that he was not the intended target. What I also heard is that he died in the midst of saving a girl at the party, telling her to get out of the way as soon as the shots started to ring out. He died a hero. Big Gang was a very important member of Pocket Town. He was the older brother of Mello and the cousin of Lil Art. 2 days later, Sircon City lost a member, Lil Cine, also known as the Bully. There are 2 different theories about who killed Lil Cine, but regardless, everything points to it being internal. Lil Cine had beef for unknown reasons with several people within Sircon City, one of them T.J. Just hours before the murder, Lil Cine had mocked Big Glizzy from Pocket Town, which I just told you about. It is speculated that TJ gave away Lil Cine's location to Pocket Town and that Rio G from KTS Pocket Town slid and killed him. Rio G heavily mocked Lil Cine after the murder, even posted a story where he wrote, "I did that. but I ain't gon' say too much. However, some believe that Rio G was false claiming, and that it really was someone within Sircon City who did it. After the assassination, Sircon City split. Sin City was created to honor Lil Cine, and two camps were formed where one was on Lil Cine's side, while the other's on TJ's side. About a month after the murder of Big Glizzy and Lil Cine from Sircon City gangsters, Pocket Town would lose their third member, and No Limit Faro would avenge his father, and by doing that, catch his first body. I am of course talking about the murder of Rio G from Pocket Town KTS, the younger brother of two legendary Pocket Town members, Lil Lay and King Rico. Rio G also had a sister, Queen Lady Shaw, who was shot and killed by Sircon City in late May 2008. On July 12, 2020, Rio G was sitting in a vehicle at a gas station in the 7000 block of South Dahlman Avenue with three other men, a 37-year-old man, a 14-year-old boy, and a 16-year-old boy. Suddenly, a silver SUV pulled up which contained three people, one driver, and two shooters who jumped out and started shooting into the other car. Rio G, 24 years old, was shot multiple times and was later pronounced dead at the hospital. The two younger boys who got hit fortunately survived after catching bullets in the back and right arm respectively. The 37-year-old man was not wounded. Just as many have probably already guessed, NLMB were the ones behind the murder. Lil Don and other Pocket Town members have repeatedly indicated that Rio G was NLMB's work, while several No Limit members have mocked Rio G heavily and claimed him as their work. Lil Don from Pocket Town even wrote, "Long live Rio G," on January 28, 2022, which marked 1 year since Lil Greg was killed. Several NLMB members wrote paragraphs about Lil Greg which made Lil Don respond with mockery and the message honoring Rio G, which indicates that NLMB were the ones responsible. According to initiated sources, the members from No Limit I have heard were involved in the murder of Faro, Cairo, and Lil Loss from No Limit, who are also part of the small group of No Limit's absolute top members called DrenchGang. However, Cairo himself claims that he is not a part of DrenchGang, only NLMB. Anyway, this was Faro's first body. Just as I told earlier in this story, it was Rio G who allegedly killed Faro's father, Boss Blizz, in June 2011. 9 years later and 9 years older, No Limit Faro avenged his father. An interesting detail, Faro was 16 at the time of the murder, the same age Rio G was when he allegedly killed Boss Blizz. Faro has mocked Rio G multiple times in both songs and on social media. For example, in the song, Real Facts, Faro rapped, "Rio got hit and they left him twitching," and "Rio got hit and y'all ain't get your get back." Per usual, the mockery of Rio G flourished on social media, both by NLMB and Sircon City, but also GMEBE who are heavy into it with Pocket Town. 2 weeks after the murder, Lil Hot from NLMB made a post where he wrote, "Loss and Faro in the field, call a play, they blitz." Lil Hot also uploaded a picture of Rio G followed by several laughing emojis. Faro uploaded a picture with Lil Loss with the caption, "Love my Lil Killa, keep him with me because I know he's riding." Faro and Lil Loss is very close friends, they grew up together and Faro has given him shoutouts in several songs. For example, in the song, "Spin Again," he rapped, "Don't make me call Lil Loss, He Will Change You. They also got 2 songs together, Give No Fs, featuring Lil Ro from DrenchGang, and Get Low, featuring Twino Grinding from DrenchGang. Twino also had things to say on Facebook about Rio G. In August 2021 he wrote, "That's Rio in the woods, so flame him up." When Faro turned 17 in 2021, EBK Juvie sent him a very interesting birthday wish where he wrote, "Fari reminds me of Blizz, because Blizz took care of his family, and with his stick, Fari take care of his. Happy birthday Lil Cuz." Faro responded to Juvie by writing, "Take mine, I'ma take yours." I don't know why, but when I first found this post, chills ran through my body. This whole story is almost unbelievable to me. It's on the same level as the story of K.I. and King Von. No Limits rap superstar G Herbo has also mentioned Faro's father in songs. In the song, Can't Sleep, he rapped, "When Lil Black was in his prime, you weren't around." This just shows how much respect and how beloved Boss Blizz really was. He was named Boss for a reason. As many of you probably already know, Rio G was not only a killer, he was also a very talented rapper, but a disrespectful one. In 2017, he dropped a song called NLMBK where he mocked multiple deceased No Limit members, and just a few months before his death, he dropped NLMBK Part 2, featuring KT3. The murder of Rio G hit Pocket Town very hard, not least his brothers who both served long sentences in prison. Faro really took out one of the most outstanding members, only at the age of 16. However, Faro was not done here. He would soon add more top killers to his body count. The nightmare continued for Pocket Town after the murder of Rio G. Only 2 months later they lost K-Dog, also known as Kevo. K-Dog, whose real name was Kevin Forbes, 28, was shot and killed in the 6900 block of South Woodlawn Avenue, which is Pocket Town territory. According to what I've heard, K-Dog was with Spook, Lil Ra and Lil Art when he was killed. All 3 of them supposedly froze up when the shots started to ring off. There is much to suggest that Sircon City was responsible for the murder, because the next day, an innocent man was killed by the name of Jeffrey in the 1400 block of East 73rd Street, which is Sircon territory. A black SUV pulled up and an unknown offender started shooting at Jeffrey and his friend. His friend, who Jeffrey apparently tried to get out of the way, which most likely saved his life, fortunately survived the shooting. But Jeffrey was tragically pronounced dead at the hospital shortly after the shooting. One thing to remember, NLMB was not beefing heavy with Pocket Town at this time. It might sound stupid since I just told you NLMB killed Rio G, but it was personal and Rio was as much a KTS member as he was Pocket Town. It wasn't until the murder of Lil Greg that Pocket Town and NLMB would bump heads for real. Anyway, only a week later, an actual member from Sircon City, Big Doo-Wop, also known as Big Dookie, who was a member from Sircon City but also Hood Gang and Mix Mob, was killed. Doo-Wop was actually killed in Mix Mob territory on the 1400 block of East 79th Street. He was sitting in a car with a 26-year-old woman when a white SUV pulled up and 2 men started shooting. The 26-year-old woman was also shot and fortunately survived. Doo-Wop, who was pronounced dead at the hospital, was mocked by several Pocket Town members, including Denny G, who wrote several disrespectful things about him on Instagram. However, some believe that it was not Pocket Town who was behind the murder of Big Doo-Wop, and that it was Busy from Hood Gang who killed him. 1 month later, Pocket Town lost another member, Nuke 30. However, he was not killed in Chicago, he was killed in Michigan. Indiana. Police were called to a residence in the 200 block of First Street for reports of a person who had been shot and was not breathing. When the police arrived, they found 26-year-old Nuke 30, whose real name was Micah Garrett, deceased in the home. During the investigation, detectives identified a person of interest, but the investigation is ongoing. Police said the incident was not a random act of violence. Nuke 30 was Pocketown's fifth loss of the year. However, it should be said that the majority of them were not killed due to an active war with a main enemy. 2020 was truly a nightmare year for Pocketown, and they were even close to losing another member when the outstanding member Lil Art was shot 16 times by the DrenchGang twins, Lil Ro and Twano from NLMB. Fortunately, he survived. Pocketown members were not the only ones getting shot in 2020. No Limit was also close to losing a few members. I've already told you about Savo's killer, Lil 40, who was shot by Fa from Death Row. The rapper Smoke to Dawn from NLMB shot in 2020. Lil Gage's uncle Marco was shot by Lil Don from Pocketown, and Lil Loss was shot by Lil Art. 2020 was just the beginning for what was about to go down in 2021. However, before we enter the year 2021, I want to tell you about Cello from NLMB Drama World, who was killed on September 7, 2020, in an unrelated conflict. NLMB and East End had been on social media mocking a dead OLC No Good member by the name of Monty. Members from NLMB, including Faro, went back and forth with members of OLC and No Good on Facebook, laughing at Virgo from OLC for crying over Monty. A few days later, Cello was riding around in a Nissan with a 30-year-old friend in the backseat. Two OLC members, one of them Jay Savage, started shooting up the car. The 30-year-old, who had a valid concealed carry license, returned fire and shot both shooters, one in the leg and the other in the arm. Cello, however, only 21 years old, was shot in the neck and was pronounced dead. The 30-year-old was shot in the thigh and was listed in good condition. Both shooters were questioned by the police, and Jay Savage from OLC was later charged with the murder, attempted murder and robbery. However, I haven't really seen any member of No Limit claim Cello. Some even speculate if he was from Seno City, but I see that as unlikely. I have seen several Drama World members paying homage, so my guess is that he mostly was close with Jeffrey Boys but was affiliated with a few No Limit members who also claimed Drama World. Now we have come to the murder of Jeezy, also known as Snow, from MTG079, who I mentioned earlier in the story when we talked about the murder of Anna from MTG079. On October 13, 2020, Jeezy, 25, was sitting in a 2005 Chevrolet Malibu Silver in the 7000 block of South Shore Drive when a silver Chrysler 300 pulled up and a man emerged from the sunroof and started shooting up the vehicle Jeezy was sitting in. Over half a dozen bullets hit the car's back passenger window and passenger door. One of the panes of glass at the bus stop next to the shot-up vehicle got shattered from the hail of gunfire. Deshaun Fletcher, who was also known as Jeezy, or Snow, from MTG079/Videoblock, sat in the back seat and was struck with multiple bullets to the abdomen and back and was taken to the University of Chicago Medical Center in critical condition. The doctor managed to keep him alive for a while, but he was sadly pronounced dead on October 15, 2 days after the shooting. On October 24, 2020, an unknown witness was interviewed by the police and was asked to view a photo array lineup. The witness viewed 6 photos and identified Jamal Hemphill, also known as Mally from NLMB. The witness identified Mally as the subject who popped out of a sunroof of a car and began shooting. According to the police report, Jeezy was sitting with his girlfriend when shots suddenly started to ring off. The girlfriend was interviewed by police and stated she was holding hands and singing with Jeezy when all of a sudden she heard gunshots and the back window of their car was shot out. She then related that she immediately ducked her head between her legs and Jeezy attempted to turn the vehicle to the left to avoid the shots, and that's when they hit a light pole. She then stated that she exited the car and ran southbound for help and alerted someone to call the police. According to the report, she never returned back to the vehicle and waited for the ambulance to show up. Therefore, she never saw the shooter or the vehicle they were shooting from. There is a great deal of interest in the police report regarding this murder. Jeezy's girlfriend stated that Jeezy was from around 79th and Merrill, which is MTG territory, and that they were always into it with the Black P Stones No Limit gang from around 79th and Essex. She then told the police that Jeezy was shot by a rival gang member from No Limit a few years back. The name of the member from No Limit who shot him was redacted, but the witness did state that the shooter was killed 1 or 2 years after he shot Jeezy. The case number for the deceased member was written in the police report, and after some puzzling, it turned out to be the same case number as the murder report for Mad Max from NLMB, who was shot in August 2018 and passed away due to his injuries 1 month later. Mad Max was thus the one who shot Jeezy from MTG in 2016 or 2017. That time Jeezy survived. On October 20th, 2020, the police emailed CPIC, asking them to generate a search to identify the suspect vehicle used in the homicide of Jeezy. The next day, the police received an email from Sergeant Ryan, who related 002 ND District car and believed he located the vehicle. A police officer observed the vehicle in traffic but lost it. However, a little while later, he located the vehicle parked, unoccupied, in a parking garage at 5118 South Lake Park. Reporting detectives then received confirmation from Sergeant Perez that they located the silver Chrysler 300 in the basement level of the parking garage. Sergeant Perez and his team then put surveillance on the suspect vehicle. Approximately 10 minutes later, reporting detectives were recontacted by Sergeant Perez, who stated that while on surveillance, he observed a male exit from the elevators of the parking garage, Jamal Hemphill, and enter into the driver's side door of the vehicle. Jamal, known as Mally, proceeded to drive the vehicle in an attempt to exit the parking garage but was stopped by Perez and his team. Malley immediately exited the car in an attempt to flee on foot but was caught and detained. Perez then related that Malley freely stated, "I ain't got nothing on me, the gun is on the car seat." The gun that was found in the car was a Glock 27 Gen 4, tan and blue steel finish 40 caliber semi-automatic handgun with an extended magazine. Malley was arrested on the scene and charged with unlawful use of the weapon. On October 22, 2020, reporting detectives learned from the firearms unit that the casings recovered from the original crime scene matched the firearm recovered from Malley's arrest on October 21, 2020. Now to something even more interesting and crazy. Reporting detectives discovered that Malley was in New York City from October 8, 2020 through October 13, 2020 and flew back to Chicago via Delta Airlines on October 13, 2020. Malley was then texting with one of his friends, telling him to come and pick him up from the airport. When Malley landed at O'Hare Airport, he shared his location with his friend who replied, "Pulling up." Keep in mind, this was the same day and just a few hours before Jeezy was murdered. Detectives then viewed surveillance footage from the parking garage. Detective observed a male black with long hair wearing a yellow hoodie with multicolored printed letters on the front of the hoodie. The man exited the elevator and walked into the garage and towards the silver Chrysler 300. The detectives identified this man as Maurice Harris, who to us who follow the Chicago drill scene is known as Wet M Up from NLMB. Wet M Up was the person Malley had been texting to and who picked him up at the airport. Detectives viewed the surveillance footage again, but this time 2 hours after the murder, and observed Wet M Up, still wearing the yellow hoodie and still driving the silver Chrysler 300. On January 22, 2021, detective received search warrant results on Malley's cell phone and could confirm that the cell phone data hits at the time and location of the homicide, 7043 South Shore Drive at 1813 hours, which was 1.5 hours after Malley landed in Chicago. Malley's whole timeline could be followed by police through phone tracking, surveillance camera in the car that day. 3 hours after the murder, the car could be seen turning onto Cornell Drive from 47th Street. The driver was wearing a bright yellow hoodie and the front passenger a dark-colored shirt. On August 25, 2021, Assistant State's Attorney Jakubiak approved felony charges of first-degree murder and aggravated unlawful use of the weapon, and Malley was placed into custody. This was a very complicated and advanced investigation. However, the police was looking for 2 suspects throughout the report, and if I understood the investigation correctly, shots were found from 2 different pistols, a Glock 27 Gen 4 used by Malley, but also a .40 caliber Smith & Wesson which was used by someone else. As I understand it, Wet M Up was the driver on the hit, which is crazy since this was only 2 months after he was released after beating a quadruple homicide. Why Wet M Up was not arrested is probably because they can neither connect him to the crime scene nor to a weapon used. No witnesses identified him either. However, when it comes to the second alleged shooter, it's kind of confusing. On October 13, 2020, detectives could see Wet M Up together with another man exiting the elevator and walking into the garage towards the Chrysler 300. The man Wet M Up was walking with was described as a male black wearing dark hoodie, Timberland boots, short dreads and light-colored jeans. This is pure speculation and based on loose rumors I heard, but I believe that it was merch money from NLMB. Regardless of who it was, the police could not connect the man to the crime scene nor a weapon. In addition, witnesses only saw one man shooting, Malley. However, it could be possible that this man shot from inside the car. Like I said, this murder was very well investigated. The police even got a warrant for Malley's entire phone, where they found a picture of the crime scene taken from Twitter, and found out that Malley had made a Google search on shootings on October 13, 2020 on South Shore Drive. What is without doubt the craziest from this investigation is that what up was allegedly the driver on the hit. I can't understand how you would do something like that after beating a quadruple homicide 2 months earlier. Another detail is that Malley and the other allegedly followed Jeezy's vehicle for a while. This, in addition to Mad Max shooting Jeezy a few years earlier, makes me wonder if he had something to do with the murder of Capo from NLMB in 2015. Jeezy was not a stranger to shootings. According to the police report, he was involved in shooting a girl in the hand during a brawl. We have now reached the year 2021, which was an incredibly eventful and tragic year. The year 2021 involves No Limit Faro to the highest degree, but also Cairo from NLMB. We begin, of course, the murder of Lil Greg from NLMB that would directly escalate the violence on the east side of Chicago. On January 28, 2021, Lil Greg was sitting in a barber shop on 1931 South State Street in the South Loop, which is approximately a 20-minute drive away from No Limit's hood. While Lil Greg sat in the barber shop, a 2010 Volvo SUV pulled up outside the shop. One man jumped out of the vehicle, walked right into the barber shop and shot Lil Greg point blank in the head. The gunman fled out of the barber shop and hopped back into the Volvo, which was seen speeding away from the scene. However, shortly after the murder, the Volvo SUV was pulled over by police. Behind the wheel sat a man by the name of Christopher Mosley, also known as CK from Pocket Town. CK was immediately arrested, but not for the murder, but because the police found a semi-automatic Glock with a laser attachment in the knapsack he was wearing. While the gun was not loaded at the time of the arrest, CK was also carrying a drum magazine capable of holding a lot of rounds, according to the prosecutors. CK was allegedly the driver on the hit. When it comes to the shooter, I have heard from a person who claims to have seen the surveillance videos that KT3 was the shooter, and that he masked up, walked into the shop and shot Greg in the head, who apparently was sleeping in the chair. The source claimed to have recognized KT3 due to his body type and movement pattern. I don't believe KT3 was the shooter. However, I have heard that both Spook and Dre were present and waiting in the car with CK while Lil Don from Pocket Town walked into the barbershop and shot Lil Greg in the face. My personal belief is that Lil Don was the alleged killer. Most of you already know why Lil Greg was killed, since I was the one who broke the story in the Story of Pocket Town Part 3 6 months ago. However, There is more to it now since the member from Pocket Town, as I described him back then, was shot and killed in July 2022. Therefore, I will go through it again. The real reason why Lil Greg was brutally murdered in broad daylight in a barbershop is because of a girl both Greg and a member from Pocket Town, known as Freeband Bobo, were interested in. When Lil Greg walked into the barbershop that day, he spotted an unknown man together with Bobo who was interested in the same girl as Greg. The tension was high in the barbershop and they both locked eyes with each other. Lil Greg immediately made a call to No Limit to get it confirmed that Bobo was an enemy and that he wanted him gone. However, the people from No Limit he called, who I highly suspect to be Cairo from NLMB, said that the person in question was cool and that he was mostly known for making money, not for being involved in any conflict. According to the information I received, Lil Greg did not want to hear it. He was pissed off about the girl, and therefore called up another part of No Limit to get the green light to take him out right where he saw him, but received the same answer again from NLMB. According to Bobo himself, he didn't even know they were interested in the same girl and that Greg had issues with him. Bobo also stated that he did not have a good idea of who Lil Greg actually was. However, I have a bit of a hard time believing that statement since Greg was a well-known No Limit member and is featured in several of G Herbo's music videos. According to the information I received, directly from Bobo, his friend who accompanied him in the barbershop peeped the tension with Lil Greg when they locked eyes and therefore made a phone call to his people to let them know who he had just seen and where they were located, apparently not with the intentions to get Lil Greg killed, but rather warn them in case anything was about to go down. However, who actually made the call is a bit divided. Bobo himself said it was his friend, but I have a hard time believing that since he also stated that his friend had no gang ties whatsoever. But regardless of which is true, it was through that phone call that Pocket Town got the information about Lil Greg's whereabouts. A few minutes later, Bobo and his friend left the barber shop, which is the reason why Lil Greg chose to stay. He thought nothing would happen and that he was safe, which he wasn't. Both Freeband Bobo and Lil Greg were known money makers in the city. Neither of them was known for being shooters or killers, which is the reason why nothing happened between them on the spot. Both had to call their people, Lil Greg with the purpose of getting the green light and Bobo killed, while Bobo and his friend had the purpose of letting their people know they could be in danger and warn them in case something would happen. There are probably many who have missed this, but the reason why I broke this story is because of Freeband Bobo himself. Bobo notified me and told me the whole story in detail in a third-person perspective when in fact he was talking about himself. Normally I don't share this type of information, but since I got approval from the family I have chosen to release it. Freeband Bobo really tried to resolve the situation and even called Cairo several times in an attempt to pay off NLMB. I have also had it confirmed from other sources that G Herbo allegedly had $50K each on Freeband Bobo, KT Stray, Spook, CK and Lil Dawn. Bobo knew he had money on his head and I could tell from the DMs that he was frustrated about the situation and maybe even scared. This was the whole reason why I chose not to disclose his name 6 months ago. He was a huge target in Chicago, and the more people who know that he has money on his head, the more dangerous it would have become for him. When Bobo was alive and I was in contact with him, he had already had 1 or 2 attempts on his life, which led to Bobo deciding to move out of Chicago. 3 months after I dropped the story of Pocket Town Part 3, Bobo would return to Chicago to party with friends, which would sadly lead to his death. We will come to this later in the story. This whole situation also has connections to why Cairo did an interview with 16shot M Visuals where he accused G Herbo of not being a real gangster and turning his back on the gang. The reason why Cairo went out to the public and talked down G Herbo is because Herbo allegedly put money on Freeband Bobo, who by the way was one of Killa Spook's best friends. However, Word on the street and within LMB was that G Herbo in reality was never going to pay. This, in addition to G Herbo not bonding out Mally, made Cairo and other members feel some type of way. I have 3 theories about this whole situation. Number 1. Only Cairo and a few others actually feel some type of way about G Herbo and rappers in general, and that he just chose to speak his mind. Number 2. Cairo trolled through the whole interview in an attempt to throw off the police and FBI to avoid a RICO investigation. Number 3. The information from Freeband Bobo is correct, but that NLMB has now resolved the situation. G Herbo has after all been seen with outstanding members such as Faro, Wet M Up and Lil Ro. Honestly, I think it's a mix and that Cairo just chooses to go on his own path and speak his mind freely, but there is clearly something behind his statement. Lil Don from Pocket Town, who I highly suspect to be Lil Greg's killer, was not shy about giving out hints about him being the alleged killer. Also, KTS actually uploaded a story the day Lil Greg was killed with the text, "We don't claim stuff we ain't do," which makes me believe he wasn't the killer. Lil Don have made several self-incriminating posts on social media. In December 2021, Lil Don uploaded an Instagram story where he wrote, "Why they acting like Greg wasn't the biggest score of 2021, that shit got a lot of hoods mad and clicking up, and anything that happened after, just remember he went first." He also mentioned CK in the story, saying they should free him and giving respect to him for staying solid. After the murder of Lil Greg, Lil Don has had it tough. He has been shot twice on different occasions, both times in the shoulder. The last time he was shot was on October 24, 2021. He was shot at around 20 times but only got hit twice from a .223, which is ammunition that is often used in rifles, which Lil Don later confirmed in an Instagram story. In Lil Don's latest song Certified, he mentions the incident and also says that the person who shot him is dead. I highly suspect that Doovie4 from Face World 079 was that person. Doovie4 was shot and killed by Lil Fats and Tuan from 800 a month after Lil Don was shot, and Lil Don did not hold back with the mockery. He posted several stories mocking Doovie4 and also stated that Doovie used to give out locations of Pocket Town members to NLMB. However, who shot Lil Don the first time is more unclear, and I actually do not think it was NLMB. Cairo from No Limit made it clear that they are after Lil Don in a paragraph about Lil Greg. In the last sentence of the largely incriminating text, Cairo wrote, "Don't worry, we're coming to get you too," which I highly believe is intended for Lil Don. However, this was in early 2022, before Lil Don got locked up, which we will come to later in this story. For those of you unfamiliar with Lil Don, he's possibly Pocket Town's top killer with several bodies under his belt. He started to become active in the years 2014 to 2015. In 2014, he shot both Ace Boogie and FGM Kuzo from Sircon City. Fortnightly both survived. In 2015, he allegedly killed Lil Eric from Sircon City. A few months later, in January 2016, he was involved in the double homicide of Kina and Lil Mo from GMEBE. He was allegedly arrested for these two murders together with T3 and Hammerhead from Mix Mob after getting snitched on by Bravo from GMEBE, who also was shot in the incident. However, Lil Don was released due to lack of evidence. As I previously mentioned, in January 2021, he allegedly shot Lil Greg 3 times point blank in the face. This makes 4 bodies, but I actually believe he got more. Once he got locked up in June 2022, while incarcerated, he even sent out a message on his Instagram story with the text, "I'm Lil Don. I put the belt on the whole No Limit. Since I've been in the county, I haven't been touched." People screaming, on cap, "He killed 3 of my homies, he can't come over here," in front of the police. Lil Don, and this supposed No Limit member he is talking about, which I suspect to be Kivo, implicating that Lil Don has 3 bodies on No Limit. One of them is definitely Lil Greg. However, when it comes to the other 2, I'm not sure. Lil Don has also told Lil Fats from 800 that he can't go toe-to-toe with him when it comes to bodies. At the time of this statement, in late July 2021, Lil Fats had 5 bodies according to himself. I'm not saying Lil Don had more, but it gives an indication to the fact that Lil Don has put in major work. On top of all of this, Lil Don has allegedly a dozen attempted murders under his belt. For example, he has allegedly been responsible for 1 or 2 mass shootings in No Limits Hood. The consequences after the murder of Lil Greg were horrific. Lil Greg was one of the original members from the Mad Max, Crazy James, Cairo, Mineski, Mally, G Herbo and Lil Bibby generation. He was close with all of them. To my knowledge, Greg was not an outstanding member in terms of putting in work, but he was very much loved, not least by G Herbo, who was close to him. The whole reason why Greg knew about Bobo is because the woman they both were interested in, showing Lil Greg pictures of her together with Bobo because she was mad at Greg, trying to get him jealous. The whole situation is just very stupid. What is also sad is that Lil Greg left 2 children behind who now have to grow up without their father. The anger, irritation and frustration were really big within NLMB after they got the news of Greg's death. They were mad over how it all played out, that everything backfired on Greg and that Lil Greg really did not deserve it since he was not an active shooter nor a killer and wasn't seen as a target. All the mockery after the murder, not least from Lil Don, did not make things better either. Another thing, it was actually after the murder of Lil Greg, or maybe Spook, that DrenchGang was created, which alludes to Wet M Up's name. DrenchGang is a small clique within No Limit that only the top members who put in major work can claim. You could compare it to a Block's Get Back gang. Now back to the timeline. After the murder of Lil Greg, the police issued safety alerts to the public that revenge can play out due to the murder of Lil Greg, and believe me, the police and not least the FBI have a good view of NLMB, much because of the beef with Black Mob and the brutal murder of Shooter Shells. but I'm pretty positive that the FBI has been closely following the course of events between Pocket Town and No Limit since the murder of Lil Greg. They knew that things were about to go down, which would show when 9 members of Pocket Town got picked up by the FBI that we come to a little later in the story. There were a lot of shootings back and forth after the murder of Greg. There were shootings on Black Mob. NLMB and MTG shot at each other on the same day. NLMB shot up No Limit 083 and Lil Loss even said that 083 RD should hang it up. And of course, No Limit shot up Pocket Town and slid through their blocks several times, looking to get revenge. However, it was 2 months of back-to-back sliding without success until they finally got their revenge. Pocket Town were on full alert all the time. A few stayed on other blocks and others stayed indoors as much as possible. However, in late March 2021, just 2 months after the murder of Lil Greg, No Limit got their revenge. This was the third part of the story of No Limit Faro from DrenchGang. Part 4 coming soon. I send my condolences to all the families who have lost loved ones to gang violence in Chicago.